morning, everybody. This is a really important moment, and it's a really important day for the state, and it's a really important day for justice. And I first also just want to give a shout to my friend Anthony Brown. I feel like we're here daily now doing this stuff, AG. But it's because of the remarkable work that's coming from you and your office, and I want to say grateful. And to each and every person here, because you realize in order for real progress to happen, it means you need to build a really big table. It means you need to have a collection of voices who are at that table. It means you need to have local leaders. You need to have state leaders. That we have to have nonprofit organizations. That we need to have advocates. That we need to have impacted citizens. Because without their work and without their leadership, without their push, none of this is possible. And while today is a day that we rejoice that progress is possible, it's also a day that we remember that there is more work that needs to be done. But we're here to do the work, and we're here to make it matter, and we're grateful for that. Because today really is about ensuring equal justice for all. It's ensuring that all of us can be seen and supported, especially in times of greatest need. It's about improving accountability for both violent criminals and improving accountability for law enforcement. It's about making sure that we're building trust between our communities and the forces that are sworn to protect them. And today, we will make Maryland safer by strengthening that trust. I'm proud to announce the launch of a new online system in the state of Maryland to help survivors of sexual assault track evidence anonymously. Now, Maryland has a strong track record of helping survivors through the process that takes place directly after the assault. Hospitals and law enforcement work with survivors to ensure they get a proper medical exam, collect and submit evidence, and are treated for their injuries. In Maryland, we offer these services free of charge. But we still need to, and we still must, do better when it comes to all the days after those initial steps. And this is what this new tracking system will help us to do. This new system is a big deal, both for the individual survivors and for our state as a whole, because for survivors, this tracking system means that they can hold law enforcement accountable for effectively and efficiently processing evidence. That matters, because we know too often that sexual assaults evidence kits end up sitting in hospitals or in precincts or in labs. There's a backlog of 5,000 untested sexual assault evidence kits in Maryland in 2022. And it's very easy for these kits to get lost when there is no accountability. That needs to change, and it changes today. Survivors can go online and see exactly where their evidence stands through every single step of the process, and if the evidence is not moving, survivors can speak out, and they can get the support that they deserve, instead of being left in the dark, having to fend for themselves. And that means this is an effort to get greater accountability for their attackers and the predators too. When the system is moving, we can bring more people to justice. And now, for our state as a whole, this new tracking system has the power to strengthen trust between the justice system and the communities that they support. Sexual assaults and rapes are the most unreported crimes in the state of Maryland. When survivors don't feel like the system is on their side, these survivors won't come forward, and justice won't be served. And that's hurting all of us. But when people feel that there is accountability, we have a better chance of getting evidence and a better chance of closing cases and a better chance of serving justice. Then we can start building towards a culture of teamwork and transparency and trust, and this kind of tracking system has already been stood up in red states and in blue states, from North Carolina to Ohio to Oklahoma. And now it's Maryland's time to get this done. And this day has been a long time coming. The General Assembly passed the Sexual Assault Victims Resources Act in 2017. But when it came time to stand up a comprehensive sexual assault tracking system, our predecessors were not able to get it done. This administration said that we were going to get this over the finish line, and this administration has kept its word. But nobody gets this work done alone. We could not have gotten to this moment without the lawmakers and the activists and the advocates and the strong survivors who have led this charge for years. This victory today is yours, and we're eternally grateful. And I want to thank our Attorney General, Anthony Brown, for his work and leadership. I want to thank Dorothy Lenning and her entire team at the Office of Crime Prevention and Policy. I want to thank my friend Senator Hedelman, and Delegate Bartlett, and the members of the Maryland General Assembly who never gave up the fight and who said this is a fight that we need to win. I want to thank Scott Schellenberger and his colleagues in law enforcement for continuing to push to make this happen. I want to thank Lisa Jordan and the fantastic work at the Maryland Coalition Against Sexual Assault. Thank you for all you continue to do for all of us. And I want to thank you, Angela Wharton, for turning her pain into progress. Angela, and all the survivors who are with us today, we see you. We are grateful. And we're better today as a state because of you. Thank you so much, and God bless you. And so, to the members of law enforcement who called on us to find better ways to track evidence and close cases, to them, we say we hear you too. To the survivors of sexual assault who've been calling on us to provide greater support in their time and need, to them I say we see you. And we're thankful for you. To our fellow Marylanders who've been hoping and praying that we can build a more accountable justice system, to them I say we heard you and thank you. And we need you, because partnership produces progress, and nothing else does. And together, we will continue to make Maryland a safer state and a more just state for all. And now, I'll hand the program over to our remarkable Attorney General, Anthony Brown.
Thank you, Governor. Yes, indeed, twice in 1 week, big announcements on public safety, progress and reform, and what a privilege it is to join you this morning in such an important announcement. I, too, want to thank State's Attorney Schellenberger, my partners in this prosecutorial effort, all the state's attorneys around the state. Thank you, Scott. Lisa Jordan, we go way back to my first session in the General Assembly, 1999. You've been at this work for so long, and you have really propelled so much progress in Maryland in this area. I want to thank all the survivors, both those in the room and certainly those who are watching online for, as the governor mentioned, prodding, pushing, promoting public officials to do the right thing on your behalf. The days, the months, and the years you've been kept in the dark about the status and location of your evidence kits, that ends, as the governor said, that ends today. And a special thank you to Angela Wharton. As the governor mentioned, turning your pain, helping to turn that pain into progress, your tragedy into triumph for other Marylanders. Thank you for being here, sharing your story, and inspiring us to do better. Governor, I'm grateful for the work of your administration in making the tracking system possible, especially, and as you point out, your Office of Crime Prevention and Policy. I want to thank all the lawmakers, certainly Senator Hedelman, and I know we're joined by Delegate Bartlett, who just came, Delegate Bartlett. That's that duo down in the General Assembly, getting this done, working with the Sexual Assault Evidence Kit Task Force, so I really want to thank you. And to the the Sexual Assault Evidence Kit Policy and Funding Committee, which is chaired by Katie Dorian, who's the chief of my criminal division. I say a special thank you to those committee members who've really been sticking to this for the last 7 years, making recommendations. In fact, it was the recommendation of the committee in 2018 that really led us here today. So I want to thank those members. And finally, to my team at the Office of the Attorney General, thank you, Zanita Wickham-Hurley, who's been at this for quite some time, and Carissa Hatfield, who, as Scott Schellenberger said, she's the leader, certainly in the committee and in the OAG on this issue. So thank you, Carissa. So this is right here a sexual assault evidence kit. When someone is the victim of a sexual assault, the criminal justice system asks them to report the crime to police. We then ask victims to go to a hospital and undergo a forensic exam, most commonly known as a SAFE exam. The purpose of the exam is to collect evidence to help identify or confirm the offender. The exam is performed with the intention of preserving the evidence in a way that can be used in a court of law. And that evidence can include the offender's DNA, the invisible fingerprint, the ultimate truth teller in the criminal justice system. This kit is a promise of justice. However, for too many victims and survivors in too many communities, not only here in Maryland but across the country, when kits left hospital rooms, victims were left with nothing but questions. Where's my evidence kit? When does justice come? Now we're going to use a barcode system to change everything here in Maryland. It is the key to the new statewide tracking system that will provide survivors with answers. Our state committee and the Governor's Office of Crime Prevention and Policy contracted with Invita Technologies on this new tracking system called Track Kit. Through Track Kit, unique barcodes will be added to all sexual assault evidence kits collected in Maryland. As the program is rolled out over the coming months, barcodes will be applied to all existing kits, including those maintained in police storage units or in crime labs. It will take some time to complete this, and I know victims have been waiting far too long already, but our commitment is to get there expeditiously. Now, when a sexual assault survivor completes the SAFE exam at the hospital, they'll be given a barcode number and password. Everyone in the criminal justice system will scan the barcode when they assume custody of the kit. For survivors, that means you can go into the tracking system 24/7, 365 days a year, armed with your barcode number and password, and track the progress of your kit from the hospital through law enforcement to the lab for testing, then back to the appropriate agency. In cases where an offender is identified, our hope, our goal is that your tracking kit and that you can track it all the way to the courtroom and to justice. This system is up and running. The process of entering kits has already begun. 14 survivors, as of this morning, have already logged onto the system a combined total of 90 times. What does it tell you? Survivors want action. They expect all of us to do our jobs. The tracking program is going to give survivors the transparency, accountability, dignity, and support they deserve. It will help law enforcement and prosecutors find the perpetrators and hold them accountable. It will help us track delays and monitor compliance. Survivors of sexual assault will no longer be kept in the dark after forensic evidence is collected. We will empower survivors. This tracking system has the potential to do just that. So I want to thank you once again, Governor, and it's my privilege to call to the podium Senator Hettleman.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for being here. Thank you, Governor, Attorney General, and all my colleagues up here and there for giving us this opportunity and for calling us together. I want to give a shout out to my colleague, Vice Chair Sandy Bartlett, who would be up here but had a scheduling conflict this morning. This is a good day, and this has been a good and important week for big announcements of how to beat back barriers in our criminal justice system. Too many sexual assault survivors are among those who historically have had to face barrier after barrier to get justice. Too many have not been believed, have had their experiences minimized, and have not been taken seriously by our systems. Systems that are supposed to be on the front lines of addressing their needs and of holding perpetrators accountable. 8 years ago, at the beginning of my legislative service, I read an article in the newspaper, co-written by someone here, about a Baltimore County young woman who went out for a drink with a coworker and was sexually assaulted, and among other horrific actions, was vaginally penetrated by a beer bottle. The day after, she went to the hospital, had a forensic nurse exam, producing what is commonly called a rape kit. She spoke with police, who unfortunately did not take her seriously. At this traumatic time in her life, after doing what we all want survivors to do, access health care and report to police, she didn't want to do battle with the system, so she set her experience aside. Fast forward 3 years later, at a different point in her life, and she reached out to the Baltimore County Police Department to find out that the rape kit and the beer bottle, the two critical pieces of physical evidence in her case, had been thrown away. And so began my journey, building on the work of so many who came before me. This happened in my county, and the more I dug into the issue, the more I learned that so much needed fixing. And thankfully, I've found many willing partners in this mission, including the folks standing here and many of my colleagues, Republicans and Democrats, who have come together to make change. It has not been easy, and at times we've had our battles, but we are making progress. And Governor, thank you for signing this bill and for demonstrating that change is possible. And when you have leadership committed to change, like the folks here today, systemic reform can happen. In 2017, we enacted laws to standardize the ways in which rape kits were preserved and protected, and later requiring that they be tested. We created a statewide standard that said that law enforcement had to keep kits for originally 20 years, doing away with 24 different standards. And later, we extended that to 75 years. In 2017, through a bill introduced by the Lieutenant Governor, we created the SAKE, the committee that the Attorney General mentioned and that many of us serve on. And what we're celebrating today, the operationalization of a tracking system, had its origins back in 2018, when we passed a bill requiring the Governor's Office of Crime Control and Prevention to apply for federal funding to create a tracking system so that stakeholders and, most importantly, survivors would know where in the process their rape kit was. It would create transparency, which in turn would help people to regain trust in the system. Maryland has been awarded over $5 million from the Department of Justice to test kits and to create a tracking system. And then in 2023, Delegate Sandy Bartlett and I introduced legislation that the governor signed that put into law what the expectations are for those interacting with the tracking system. It wasn't good enough to build it. we actually have to hold stakeholders accountable for interacting with it. Amanda Nguyen, a sexual assault survivor and founder of RISE, pushed for the enactment of the Sexual Assault Survivors Bill of Rights that was passed unanimously in Congress a few years ago. She was nominated for a 2019 Nobel Peace Prize and said in her testimony in support of our bill last year, quote, "Access to justice is a prerequisite to true peace," unquote. I couldn't say it any better than that. Survivors deserve justice and they deserve peace. And I hope that this tracking system will enable them to have both. Thank you.
Good morning. I'm Scott Schellenberger. I'm the state's attorney in Baltimore County, and I'm pleased to be here today with the launch of the Sexual Assault Evidence Kit Tracking System. Many of the people up here and many in the audience have worked very hard for a number of years. Actually, when I just heard it mentioned that it was first brought in 2017, I had to lean over to Senator Helderman and say, have we been doing this that long? But we have. We have been doing this that long. And I've been to many, many, many meetings to get us to this point. And honestly, there were many times where I would sit in these meetings and I would think, wow, there's really going to be accountability about whether the police and prosecutors are doing their jobs. And as you heard, that includes me. But then as I would listen to some folks, I realized that that's exactly what we needed to do. There needs to be accountability, and that's what this tracking system will do. When it launched a few weeks ago, unfortunately, we had a very terrible incident in Baltimore County in which there were two individuals sexually assaulted by a stranger. Because I knew the system had launched, the week after that happened, I actually went into the system and did a few clicks, and next thing I knew exactly where those two kids were. They were still at the hospital. But interestingly enough, I knew the nurse who had done the exam. And so therefore, I knew who our first witness was going to be in that sexual assault case to prove the introduction of that DNA evidence. Just yesterday, because we were coming here today, I clicked on that tracking system again, and I saw that the two kits are now in the property room in the Baltimore County Police Department. And I knew not only who the nurse was, but now I knew what officer had picked the kid up. And that's what this system will do. And more importantly, because of the word accountability, what has to happen next is when I click on that the next time, 30 days, 60 days, I better see that it's not sitting in property evidence. I better see that it's somewhere else being tested. And that's where it comes to accountability, and that's what this system does. It's accountability for police, prosecutors, and access for the victim to really know what's going on. Just so you know, I would like to thank our leaders over the years who have led this committee. They send out way too many emails telling us we're having meetings. Thank you very much, Zanita Hurley, for leading us first. Rhea Harris for leading us. Carissa Hatfield, thank you so much for being our leader and bringing this home. We really appreciate it. I pledge to you that I and all the law enforcement in this state will continue to be held accountable, and we will utilize this system to make sure that the victims of sexual assault get their day in court. And now we will hear from, sorry, Governor, the most important speaker today, and that's Angela Wharton.
Good morning. What a glorious day this is. As I sat down to write this speech, my heart overflowed with a mixture of emotions, gratitude and hope, and a profound sense of responsibility, understanding that it is only by the grace of God that I'm able to stand here before you today. I'm a victim survivor of a harrowing experience that no one should ever have to endure. I am a wife, I am a mother of 2 daughters, and a woman who was once robbed of her sense of safety and security, and in the most brutal way possible. In 1996, I was raped in the woods at gunpoint in Northeast Baltimore, a day that forever altered the course of my life. In the aftermath of the assault, I summoned every ounce of courage within me to undergo an invasive and humiliating process called the safe examination. It was a grueling ordeal where my body was a literal crime scene, but I endured it. I endured it with the hope that justice would prevail and that my perpetrator would be held accountable for his heinous actions. However, in 2018, over 20 years after that horrifying night, the devastating news reached me. All of my evidence, including my untested rape kit, had been destroyed by the local police department. The very evidence that could have brought my assailant to justice had been callously discarded less than 2 years after the rape, leaving me feeling betrayed, violated, and utterly powerless. At that moment, I was devastated, re-victimized, and began to spiral into a deep depression. I grappled with a profound sense of anger and injustice. I feared that my voice, my story, and my pain would forever be silenced and forgotten. But I refused to be silenced. I refused to let my trauma define me or dictate my future. Instead, I made a choice to rise above the ashes of my pain, to reclaim my voice and stand in solidarity with my fellow survivors in the fight for justice and accountability. And so, it is with a heart brimming with gratitude that I welcome the introduction of Maryland's new sexual assault evidence kit tracking system. This groundbreaking initiative represents a ray of hope for survivors like me who have endured the anguish of having their trauma dismissed and their pursuit of justice thwarted by a system that failed to protect and serve. To the governor's office, the Attorney General's office, the SAEK committee, and all of the organizations behind this monumental effort, I extend my deepest gratitude. Your tireless dedication and unwavering commitment to ensure that no survivor is left behind have not gone unnoticed. Your actions speak volumes to the countless survivors who have long been denied justice, validation, and closure that they so rightly deserve. With this new tracking system, survivors are no longer left in the dark, wondering about the fate of their rape kits or the progress of their cases. Transparency and accountability are now within reach, offering a glimmer of hope to those of us who have long been denied a voice and a chance to seek justice. As a mother of 2 daughters, I am filled with a renewed sense of purpose and determination. I vow to continue to use my voice to advocate for change, to raise awareness, and to support efforts that give other survivors a greater chance at justice. I want my daughters to grow up in a world where their voices are heard, their bodies are respected, and their rights are upheld. In closing, let us remember that in the face of darkness, there's always light. In the wake of pain, there's always healing. And in the midst of despair, there's always hope. Together, let us stand united in our pursuit of justice, empowerment, and a future where every survivor's story is acknowledged, believed, and honored. Thank you, and God bless you.
Good morning. I'm Lisa Jordan with the Maryland Coalition Against Sexual Assault. We are the coalition of rape crisis centers serving survivors like Angela all across the state of Maryland. We're the home of the Sexual Assault Legal Institute, one of the only legal services programs in the whole country that's devoted to helping survivors. MCASA's mission is to empower sexual assault survivors. And I am here to say, we believe you. We support you. And the creation of a tracking system for rape kits will help prevent future backlogs and hold the government accountable, my government friends, so that you as survivors can seek justice. Today marks a huge step forward in the implementation of the tracking system. This first phase provides the system, the government, and individual survivors with access to the Track It system. We look forward to the next phase that will ensure that rape crisis centers, child advocacy centers, and sexual assault advocates and attorneys also have access to the system, and we stand ready to help survivors navigate the tracking system itself, to use that tracking system to enforce the rights of survivors, and to ensure that Maryland never again has a backlog of untested rape kits. Know that the tracking system is part of the larger Sexual Assault Kit Initiative, a partnership between the Attorney General's SAKE Committee, led by the fabulous Katie Dorian, the Moore administration, and MCASA. Our Saki advocates, led by the wonderful Laura Jessic, who is with us here today, strives to eliminate the backlog of the untested rape kits, prevent backlogs, and really support the survivors through this system. Imagine learning that you went through a rape exam years ago, yesterday, decades ago, and finding out that the prosecutors at law enforcement did nothing. We are there to support survivors through this and to advocate to make sure that this doesn't happen again and that the right steps are taken now. If you have questions about the status of your kit or how to use that tracking system, you can contact us. I'll give you the phone number of 833-364-0046 and notification at mcasa.org, or you can call 211 or visit mcasa.org to find your rape crisis centers. Know that we are here for you. We believe you. Thank you, Governor Moore, for recognizing the importance of this step. We are so glad you're part of the anti-sexual violence community, and we look forward to making real progress, because everybody keeps talking about 2017 when we passed that bill, but let me tell you, there were bills before that. There were bills that said, oh, let's do a protocol. There were bills that had other committees. the Attorney General and I have been doing this for decades. It's time to make more progress so survivors can get their exams at any hospital they show up at, and that we then do something with those rape kits. Thank you, Attorney General Brown, for your long-standing leadership and support for survivors. You and I have fought together for so long, and the work continues. I remember when you first came to the General Assembly, and I remember talking to you, and you said, "Oh, no, I've had these cases. I know about sexual assault survivors, and I want to help," and you have. Thank you. Thank you, Vice Chair Bartlett. Thank you, Senator Hedelman. You are championing the laws that help survivors, and you championed this law that required that sexual assault kits be tracked, and you included in that law that advocates have access to that tracking system. But you know, most of all, like everyone here, I want to thank Angela Warden. She and I have also known each other a very long time. Survivors who choose to have a forensic exam to provide the state with vital information that we need to convict sex offenders and make our communities safer, they should be lifted up as heroes. Tracking the evidence that they have provided from their bodies after the trauma of a sexual assault, that's the least we can do. Thank you all for being here. I believe that there is now time for questions.
We'll take questions now. Anyone? Hannah, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. Governor Moore, do you know how long the system will take to stand up completely?
Well, we know we actually have the system, as the Attorney General's mentioned, is actually up and going now. And I think that's why today becomes such an important milestone, because this is when the accountability then becomes in place for a full standing up. Making sure that we have these systems in place in all of our various hospital systems, and also making sure that all the partners who have been involved in this, to include law enforcement, now understand both the guidelines and the accountability measures. So we actually have the process that's actually going and up in place now, but this really begins the full accountability measurement process.
Just a quick follow-up. The backlog at crime labs and police departments, do you have any idea of how long it will take all of those to be?
That's Carissa. Carissa, come on up here, and our leader on the details particularly, yes indeed.
Morning. Thank you for your question. So we are continuously working on that process. As mentioned by the governor, we are, as of 2022, at around 5,000 kits untested. We have both state and federal funding to clear that backlog. I unfortunately can't give you an exact day, time, month of when that will occur, but it is an ongoing process that we are working on expeditiously. Thank you.
Can I follow up one thing?
Yeah.
I mean, the bill that we passed in 2023 does say that everything needs to be uploaded by December of 2025.
All right, I'll take the next question. Brett.
So that's I'll keep it quick. Are stickers being affixed to existing cases? I mean, you're gonna go back to those people and give them login?
Yes, that's correct. So what will happen from here, cases that come into the system going forward will have a barcode already affixed. Any kits that are in the state's possession in law enforcement evidence lockers or other locations will have a barcode affixed to them by that deadline. Thank you.
Pam. Thank you. Also another detailed question. Are there any potential hurdles or barriers? How are survivors going to access this? Do we need internet access? What about survivors who may not have that?
Sure. So you would need internet access to access the system. It is an online system. But I'm going to let Lisa Jordan take over here. She's got some thoughts to share.
Thank you so much, Carissa. Thank you for that question. You know, this is why it's so vital that advocates also have access to the tracking system. We work with survivors all over the state. There are multiple barriers. First of all, any of you who've had medical care in an urgent matter and then are handed a piece of paper, you know how easy it is to lose that information. So we are concerned about survivors just being able to keep track of that information and have help if they lose it. We are concerned about survivors who are here without documentation and may feel uneasy interacting with the government. We are concerned about survivors who don't use English as their first language or who don't have good technological capabilities. We are concerned about people who just had deep and long-lasting trauma and simply need the support. And finally, although the tracking system is amazing, thank you for getting it in place. It really is just a tool. It is just a tool to enforce the rights of survivors. They need to have advocates, and they also need to have victims' rights attorneys to support them through the system, so they have access to make sure that their wishes are respected through the prosecutorial system, that they have good referrals to the rape crisis centers so they can receive counseling and support. There are multiple barriers. This is one piece, and we have to make sure that this piece is working in partnership with all of us.
Thank you, Lisa. I'll take Brendan. I'm not sure who this question is directed to. This technology has been in existence for a long time, and I'm wondering if you could put a really fine point on this for us. Why did this take so long? Was it political will? Was there more legislation that was critically needed? Was it lack of funding? What was it?
Certainly, so I can take that question. So as you heard up here today, the committee was stood up in 2017. We received the enabling funding in 2018. A part of the process of standing up a system like this is understanding what will need to go into the system. So when we're talking about how many kits will need to go into the system across how many locations, and the challenges that that faces. And we didn't have at that point in time a concrete inventory of how many kits were in the state of Maryland. So what we needed to do is to conduct an inventory of every single kit that existed in the state. Unfortunately for us, that inventory really began in 2019, and I'm sure you all know, COVID hit us in 2020, and like many other locations, it affected us greatly. That inventory was an in-person inventory where our investigators had to put their hand on every single kit to count it and notate case numbers and all of those things, so it wasn't something we could do digitally. So that inventory was delayed significantly until, I would say, late 2021, early 2022. And at that point, we moved forward with looking for a system that would fit the kits that we had and the number of kits we had and the locations that we had. We began the RFP process. Again, government, I'm sure you all know, was a little slow, and slowed down a little bit more by COVID. Unfortunately, a lot of folks couldn't get together. Processes were delayed. But ultimately, once we secured the RFP for the system in October 2023, we were actually one of the fastest to launch the system across the country. We launched the system in 7 months, and the national average is around a year to launch a system like this. So once we had it, we moved as quickly as we could. Unfortunately, we were just held up by the pandemic.
Thank you. I have time for one more question, Kim. So say a survivor logs on and sees that their rape kit is just sitting there, it's installed. How do they alert someone? Who do they contact to let them know, hey, something's wrong with this, what's going on?
Absolutely. So the way that the system is set up, we set it up from the beginning where there is a contact person for every single law enforcement agency, every single hospital, every single lab, every single state's attorney's office. So if a survivor logs in and they see it's sitting in an evidence locker, they can contact that agency and say, what's happening with my case? I can see that it's been sitting in the locker since X date. What are we doing to move this forward? And so they can actually contact that agency and hold them accountable and say, why isn't this moving and what's happening with my case?
And so you may know that survivors can also have the evidence collected on an anonymous basis, right? And so for those cases, the survivor may not want to reach out to the system, or for other reasons. Someone may not feel comfortable calling police officers, prosecutors' officers. So every single jurisdiction in Maryland has a rape crisis center. I know that Amanda Rodriguez from Turnaround is here representing one of the rape crisis centers. They can also reach out to the rape crisis center. They can reach out to the Sexual Assault Kit Initiative advocates, and they can also reach out to the Sexual Assault Legal Institute. And from those nonprofit organizations, they can get free confidential advice and have someone who can really fight for them and help them through the system. They don't have to fight on their own through the system that has really failed them for so many years.